Hello and welcome to another episode of Latitude. And this episode is a subject which has been recently in the news, but more importantly, it could be the source of a conflict between India and Pakistan. And that is about the sharing of the waters of the Indus River and its tributaries. This has been a subject which Pakistan brings up from time to time. And more recently, India's patience has run out. And India has decided that it wants the treaty to be renegotiated. Perhaps the foremost expert on the subject regarding water sharing, and how it could become a source of conflict is Professor Brahma Chellaney, Professor Emeritus at the Center for Policy Research, author of two books on water, peace, and war, and water wars in Asia. And clearly, he has done a detailed analysis of how water and sharing of water between lower and riparian states could lead to a conflict. So, welcome on the show, Professor Chellaney.
Thank you, Maroof.
It's always a pleasure to have you, and I'm one of your big admirers, as you know. And let me start the show by asking you to give us a background to what is the problem. We understand that the Indus River Treaty was negotiated after 9 years and finally settled between India and Pakistan in September 1960, when Pandit Nehru was here and Ayub Khan was in Pakistan, and the World Bank was an intermediary to the whole exercise. But why have we suddenly decided that we've had enough of Pakistan? Because the same problem Pakistan's been creating over the years.
You're absolutely right, Maroof. India thought that by reserving the lion's share of the Indus waters for Pakistan, India would get peace. So in a sense, India traded water for peace.
Yeah.
Yet what India has got since 1960, when the treaty was concluded, is Pakistan's unending hostility. The Indus Treaty remains the world's most generous water-sharing pact. It reserves for upstream India less than 20% of the waters of the six-river Indus system. So more than 80% of the waters are reserved for Pakistan's exclusive use. No other treaty in the world comes anywhere close to matching the water generosity of the Indus Treaty. So the question that many in India, and the government of India is also asking that question, can India's water generosity be repaid with blood? That's a real issue. And that's the issue which has forced India to issue a notice to modify the treaty. In other words, for the first time since the treaty was concluded and ratified by the two countries, India is seeking to modify the terms of the treaty. But the modification of the terms of the treaty can only be done with Pakistan's consent. That is the issue. How do you get Pakistan to agree to change the terms of the treaty?
Yeah, very true. I mean, the provisions, as I understand, there are three broad set of provisions that allow both sides to, address the issues of concern. For example, there can be questions that are handled by the Water Commission of the two countries. And if that cannot be settled, then differences are resolved by a neutral expert. Now, the neutral expert is also, Pakistan in the past has shown its desire not to accept any neutral expert as acceptable to them. And then finally, the disputes are to be referred to a court of arbitration. Now, all that put together, it is very clear that Pakistan has been suggesting a way forward and then unilaterally pulling back, which is not something that you're allowed to do. So Pakistan has been raising questions about the three rivers that are attributable to India for all its usage, which I believe India has not been able to use even properly, the 19.48% of the waters that is designated for India. And then Pakistan complains that we are interfering with the flow of the 80+% that goes into Pakistan. So what is really, if Pakistan, you said, doesn't come by consensus on board, then what is it really that India can do?
This treaty is unique in several aspects. First, it's a very lengthy treaty with its annexures. It's the size of a book. So it's a very complex treaty and it's of indefinite duration. But the Americans have shown that by withdrawing from the ABM treaty, the anti-ballistic missile treaty which was signed with the Soviet Union, the Americans unilaterally withdrew from that treaty. So they have provided India an example of how to suspend or to withdraw from a treaty. In fact, in international law, a fundamental change of circumstances allows one party to unilaterally suspend or terminate a binding bilateral treaty. So India has the right to issue a notice of suspension or termination to Pakistan, but India has only served a notice to modify the terms of the treaty. But the real issue is this, that Pakistan doesn't want India to harness the waters of the upper three rivers for the benefit of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. India's Jammu and Kashmir region is an energy poor region. The electricity there is perennially in short supply. And therefore, it's very essential for India to harness the waters of the Indus system to generate hydropower. And the treaty allows India to build what is known as a run-of-river hydro plants. These are plants which do not have any dam reservoir. They generate electricity through the natural flow of a river. So, in addition to that, the treaty also allows India to build small storage of 4.4 billion cubic meters on these three upper rivers, which are the large rivers of the Indus system. India has built no storage whatsoever, despite the treaty allowing India to build that kind of storage. But what Pakistan does is that whenever India builds a small, moderate-sized hydro plant to generate hydropower, it internationalizes that issue. It seeks international intercession. It wants a neutral expert to be appointed or a court of arbitration to be appointed. So every project it drags into international arbitration. And that really is designed to prevent India from addressing the energy shortages in Jammu and Kashmir.
Exactly.
So by internationalizing every project that India embarks on, it ensures that India's Jammu and Kashmir region remains starved of energy.
Yeah, you're right. In fact, you brought me nicely to my next question. There is this case of Pakistan objecting to the technical grounds about the Kishan Ganga project, which is a project very much on the rivers assigned to India. And they have continuously continued to claim that the construction of the dam in principle is not something they object, but they object to the technical grounds, while India has fully complied again and again to the technicalities. So clearly there is a Pakistani design to keep putting a spanner in the works.
Well, Kishan Ganga is a very small project. It's just 300 megawatt hydropower project. And yet, even that project has been dragged into international arbitration. The problem is this, that the treaty allows India to generate hydropower without building dam reservoirs. Kishan Ganga, like other projects, has no dam reservoir. It's a run-of-river project. So, but by raising technical objections to the design of the project, what Pakistan seeks to do is to involve international community, international arbitrators in its disagreement. Every disagreement, it turns into an international issue. So time has come for India, finally, to say enough is enough, and that's what India has done. I hope that the issue that the notice that India has issued to Pakistan is a notice which is going to be backed by a well thought out legal strategy. I hope the government of India is not just playing to the public gallery at home by sending such a notice, but rather sending the notice is is part of a strategy to exert pressure on Pakistan to stop exploiting India's generosity and repaying it with blood. In a sense, this is what Pakistan is doing. You know, it's an issue of water and blood. The water flows from India to Pakistan, and the blood is flowing in the other direction, thanks
True.
to Pakistan's cross-border terrorism.
So you made a very strong point. We'll come back after a break to look at what could be the way forward before India tries to do the ABN thing on Pakistan, as you had mentioned earlier, which means just unilaterally pull out of the treaty and leave Pakistan stumped. But is that the way forward, or are there any other options? We'll discuss after a break. Welcome back. We continue to have the distinguished professor with us, Professor Brahma Chellaney, quite easily India's foremost expert on water issues, and particularly the Indus Water Treaty, having authored 2 books on rivers, waters, and the possibility of conflict in Asia over the waters. And here we're discussing the Indus Water Treaty and India's desire to have the treaty reviewed, or, as a worst case for Pakistan, India just decides to abandon the treaty. Is that a possibility? Professor Chellaney will educate us. My question to you, sir, is there is certainly a need to renegotiate the treaty so that to establish some kind of an institutional structure or legislative framework to address this treaty for a variety of reasons, from climate change to water availability, etc. And this is a point that was brought up by even a 2022 Parliamentary Committee report. Your views?
Well, India needs to fashion the Indus Treaty as an instrument of leverage. Such leverage can serve as a potent instrument in India's arsenal against Pakistan. And building leverage over the Indus Treaty is a cheaper option for India to reform Pakistan's behavior than fighting a war. Without India withdrawing from this pact, further treaty-linked consultations must be conditioned upon Pakistan severing its ties with state-sponsored terrorist groups and ceasing its export of terrorism to its neighbors. Halting Pakistan's sponsorship of terrorism to bleed India by leveraging the world's most generous water-sharing treaty offers a bloodless path for India. And I think one point that we should keep in mind is that the Indus Treaty has only burdens for India, responsibilities. But Pakistan insists only on its rights, not on its responsibilities. The treaty also imposes certain obligations on both parties. If one party says, I only want my rights, I will not have anything to do with the responsibilities, the obligations, then how can that treaty continue indefinitely? So I think the issue is not about India wanting to withdraw from the treaty. Withdrawal from the treaty is not India's aim. But what India should be looking at is suspending consultation mechanisms. There's a permanent Indus Commission that meets every year. By keeping the post of the Indus Commissioner vacant in India, India can actually post a suspension of consultation mechanisms.
Right.
So without withdrawing from the treaty, India should act without being constrained by it. That's the way to leverage.
In fact, it is precisely these kind of observations that international observers, there is a gentleman called Federico Giuliani, as you may be aware, who looks at these issues and writes about it. And he has brought out again and again that Islamabad, in its typical style, has taken up misconceived complaints on the basis of breach design specifications delineated under the Indus Water Treaty, or to put it more simply, it has become an article of faith within Pakistan's Punjab and its Punjabi politicians, who tend to project India in poor light and show that India is hogging up all the water, when the real mismanagement is with the canal systems within Pakistan. Yes, their population has grown, but the key issue is their water mismanagement is a case study by itself. Your views?
Your problem is exactly what you point out. What we are seeing in Pakistan is a agrarian economy that relies on food exports and the exports of water-intensive crops like rice and cotton. Rice and cotton are two of the most water-intensive crops. And the Pakistani Punjab province, where much of the production happens, in other words, by exporting rice and cotton, water-poor Pakistan is exporting water effectively and denying water to downstream provinces, like especially like Sindh. The delta of the Indus system in Sindh is beginning to dry up because the Pakistan's Punjab province is diverting much of the water, leaving very little for Sindh province. So these are inter-provincial issues in Pakistan that have inflamed passions for a long time. And this water mismanagement that we see in Pakistan on a grand scale can only be corrected by Pakistan developing an economy that doesn't rely on the export of water-intensive food items as the main foreign exchange earner. A more broad-based economy, an economy that does not rely on the export of water-intensive food for earning foreign exchange reserves.
Well, if I might just come in here, I mean, since I also follow events and issues in Pakistan, that is asking for a long shot, at least for now, for Pakistan to reorient itself economically, since they can't seem to manage their economy as it stands. And they are short of going bankrupt until suddenly China or one of the Gulf states bail them out. But the issue centrally is that Pakistan tends to run back to the World Bank again and again to seek interventions and appoint you know, uh, a court of arbitration or some exercise like that, with the intent of disrupting the development of water resources on the Indian side. And the World Bank has come back from time to time to dismiss Pakistan's allegations. But even the World Bank's patience must be running out, because this is just a kind of a political ploy by Pakistan to continue to blame India for the exploitation of the water. But there are issues that are related to the origins of the treaty, where Pakistan felt that two of the dam projects that came from the Ravi, and the other was at the Firozpur area, where on the Satluj, India was holding on to water, as Pakistan alleged. And coincidentally, in 1948, there was a drought in Pakistan, and they blamed it again on India, if I can remember my history correctly. So there are issues there that do we need to create a greater public engagement exercise to address the narrative, or we leave it to the Indus Waters Commission and it's a kind of secretive meeting which happens from time to time and nothing comes out of it?
I think India needs to engage in better public diplomacy on the Indus water issue, because the bare facts are not known to the public in India.
Yes.
Or to the world. And therefore, it's very important for India to speak up on these issues, to clarify its stand, and most importantly, to state what the basic facts are. India has never sought to impede the flow of any of the Indus rivers to Pakistan.
Right.
The three lower rivers, Ravi, Beas, and Satluj, are reserved for India's exclusive use. But even from those three rivers, India is not able to fully utilize their waters, and therefore bonus waters flow to Pakistan, even from Ravi, Beas, and Satluj. But
True. True.
the three upper rivers, the Chenab, which is the largest in terms of cross-border flows, followed immediately by Jhelum, and then the main Indus stream, which is the smallest of the three upper rivers. Those three rivers provide more than 80% of the basin waters for Pakistan. And India has never sought to impede the flows of those upper rivers in any way. It has only sought to harness those rivers to generate hydropower for the state or the region of Jammu and Kashmir.
Yes.
And that has prompted each time Pakistan to seek international intercession.
Right.
India is not even seeking to build any kind of hydro infrastructure that could impede the flow of the Indus system rivers to Pakistan. So Pakistan should have no concern about India's intent, because India doesn't have the hydro infrastructure, nor is it seeking to build the hydro infrastructure to impede the flow of rivers to Pakistan.
Okay. So I think you've made some very strong point, push that card. But if you look at Pakistan or China's agenda in the erstwhile state of Jammu Kashmir, from Aksai Chin to the valley and beyond, it's all about the waters. And we'll probably hear more from you on the subject. I'm looking to read a good editorial by you on the subject. And thank you very much for being with us. And thanks to everybody for watching. Until our next episode, goodbye.